What is the ego? The ego is a bundle of thoughts and feelings. Thoughts in the form of deep beliefs, thoughts in the form of preferences and opinions, thoughts in the form of positions, positionalities, and then feelings, different feelings, the feeling of being a separate entity, the feeling of being a doer, the feeling of being a thinker. This is basically what the ego is. And it's nothing that you can pinpoint and find and go, that's the ego right there. That's the illusion of it. Even just talking about it, the ego, the separate self. But then with clarity, when you go and look for this separate self, when you go and look for this ego, where is it? Where's that one thing that we're labeling the ego? Where's that one thing that we're labeling the separate self? Where's that one thing that we're labeling I? We can't find it. We can't find it. The closer you come up to it, then where is it? It's not here, right? But when everything's just kind of going, life is just happening, there's a strong sense of, like there's a somebody in me, there's a something, there's a separate entity that's in me that I refer to as myself, as the I that's separate from the rest of life, the I that's separate from you, right? So the ego is more of a process. It's more of an activity than it is as a one thing, right? It's not like it's like one physical thing that's there in your mind going, that's the ego. There's the separate self. It's not that. You have to see that thoughts are just happening. There's just always a stream of thoughts. And it's these stream of thoughts that it's like an active process. It's just activity, and there's just a cluster of thoughts and feelings, and it's just kind of always moving. And this is where it's like, there's the ego, that's the separate self. But as you become more clear, the mind becomes more slow, and all of that kind of cluster seems to start almost disintegrating the closer you look at it, and the more still it becomes. And then you're looking for where is that thing? Where's that separate self? Where's that I? Where's that thing in me that I call me, myself? And you can't find it. You can't find it. But whenever you're not looking at it, there's a very strong sense of, it's right there. It's so solid. It feels so solid, right? And that's kind of the maturity of the mind, the evolution of the mind, that who you think you are in the form of an ego or a separate self, at the start, it feels very fixed and rigid, like an iceberg. And then as the mind evolves, the ego matures, it becomes more fluid, you can say, like the water, right? So it's the same iceberg, but now it's more melted, and it's now the water. And then that water becomes even more loose, right? The ego it's more loose. Your identity is loose, right? There's this kind of transition from like person to presence kind of thing. And then it gets loose, and now it's not so fixed and rigid. It's not even that fluid anymore, right? It's now more like the steam or the vapor, the water vapor. It's more dispersed. The particles are expanded, right? And that's when it's very loose. It's easy to see through, because it's like the particles are more spaced out, right? The particles of the ice are very dense, water less dense, as vapor even less dense. And then even that is transcended to then go, oh, I'm not the iceberg, I'm not the water, and I'm not the vapor. I'm the space that's happening within. So that's what I mean, is it's very illusionary, and it's always changing. It's always changing, right? Your personality is always changing, right? Your positionalities are always changing. Your preferences are always changing. Your opinions are always changing. Your thoughts are always changing. Your beliefs are always changing. Your feelings are always changing. So how can it be this one fixed thing if it's always changing? When you start looking and investigating this separate self, and it falls apart. It was never actually held together by anything. It just appears to be held together. And when you're not looking at it, then it feels very rigid. And like I said, the more you look at it, the more you question, then it just starts falling apart. But you also are seeing that it was never held together. Or you can kind of almost use the analogy that, like, whenever you're looking with the eye of awareness, it's like a laser beam, and it just dissolves anything that it looks at. It just sees through it. It just sees through it. Or you can think of that this separate self is hiding in the shadows. But when you shine the light of awareness on the shadow, there's no shadow, right? There's no more shadow, right? You're illuminating it with the light of awareness. So the separate self can only hide in the shadows. It can only hide in the subconscious. As soon as you make the subconscious conscious, as soon as you start looking, consciousness is this, it's like this light, it's this knowing, it's this intelligent light. When you look at it, where is it? So you're shining like a spotlight, a searchlight on this separate self, this ego, and you never find it. Right? Or you could say it's like another analogy. I'm giving too many analogies in this video. Another analogy is it's like a mirage. It looks like it's there. There's the oasis in the desert. But when you come closer to it, it disappears. What the heck? Such an illusion. From far, it looked like there was really, an oasis right there in the middle of the desert. But going closer, where is it? It just vanished. The separate self is a lot like that. Right? It's illusionary. You start seeing that everything is really held together by this, or attached to this root of an I, being this separate I. That is going to take you forever if you just go, oh, what's my belief about money? What's my belief about relationships? What's my belief about love? What's my belief about my self-worth? All these things are just like branches. But the root of that plant is the I. So you never get to it by just cutting off beliefs, going at different beliefs. The belief is the belief in the I. Go after that belief, that you believe to be a separate self, that you believe that you're some separate entity that's perhaps somewhere here behind the eyes. Right? Or somewhere maybe in your heart, right? But you have to look. If you don't look, you never find, right? So kind of mentioned this in another video. It's seeing through that illusion, seeing through clearly. And when it's so clear, it's just like whatever you're holding on to, this sense of I, how can you hold on to something that you're seeing is not there, right? It's not there. So you go, it just vanishes, disappears right before your eyes. And then what's left is truth, right? So yeah, what is the ego? It's not this separate entity that a lot of people kind of make it out to be. That's actually another trap when you hear people, oh, it was my ego. My ego made me do that. Now you're getting to some dangerous territory where there's two of you. There's the you, right? There's the you, which is also another thought, this thought coming up. There's the me, and then there's the one who did the bad thing. That's my ego. It's like the alter ego, right? It's just another thing to blame, right? That when we do something that's considered not good. How could you do that? Well, it was my ego. It was my ego, right? I can't blame it. There's nobody around me, so who do I blame? Okay, I'll blame this ego. My ego made me do it, right? Now there's two of you, right? Or you see when people say like, oh, I've got a good voice in my head and a bad voice in my head. Well, now you have two voices. It was enough to just have one voice in the head. Now you have two voices, right? But what is aware of the two voices? That's your true self. It's the impersonal awareness. Anything that's personal is not the real you, right? Suffering is always personal, and happiness is impersonal, right? Think about it. You're suffering. It's always personal. It's always attached to something. This I. No I, no suffering. No I, just happiness, right? When this is seen very clearly, and when you become more and more aware and watch, and the mind stills, you'll start seeing how this ego is not always there. This sense of you is not always there. You'll go for stretches where there'll be no identification activity, where this separate I just kind of is gone, and then it appears. It appears. And when it's always trying to claim ownership and make itself out to be special and build itself up and all these sorts of things, which I'll explain in other videos, just kind of, you could say, patterns or tendencies or activities of the conditioned mind. So that the ego is a bunch of conditionings. That the conditionings comes from your parents, school, government, religion, culture, basically everything outside of you. Conditions are like programs. So it's like, everything from outside of you programmed your mind. You didn't program your mind, right? So if you didn't program your mind, it's, how can it be you, right? How can it be you, the real you, if you didn't even program it, right? So then it's where enlightenment is an undoing. It's a deconditioning. It's a destruction. That's really what it is. You're deconstructing the mind. You're deconditioning the conditioned mind. You're deprogramming the programmed mind. You're undoing. And all the doing is the separate self. Spirituality is really the shift from doing to being. The being is your true nature. That's your true nature. The doing, you're aware of all the doing. Doing, thinking is a doing. You're aware of the doing. Holding on to beliefs is a doing. Holding on to positions is a doing. Right? Wearing different personalities, different masks is a doing. This is all doing. You can see it's all activities that you're doing. Now, what's aware of all those doings? It's something that's a non-doing. And that which is a non-doing is being. It's the being that's aware of all the doing. And the doing is arising in the being. When you're simply being, just being. It's really what meditation is. It's just being aware. Being aware of being itself. Highest form of meditation. Another way you can say it is being aware of being aware. It's the highest meditation. You don't need to just sit in a cushion and meditate like that. You can you're simply just being. You'll find that when you are in the doing mode and you're getting as identified as the doer who's doing something, that's when people say, like, I'm in my own way. I'm overthinking this. The source of that overthinking is believing that you are the thinker. Remove the thinker, and how can you overthink? Right? You have to see clearly that the thoughts are just appearing. There's no one who thinks them. Where you go, let me just think this thought right now. It's never how it is. Right? It's just a thought appears and then there's an action. There's not even like two thoughts appearing at the same time and then a thinker comes in and goes, let me take this thought and now let me say it. There's only one thought appearing in the mind at a time. There's only one thought. It's one thought at a time, not two. You can't think two thoughts at a time. There's just one thought that appears and then an action being taken. But the belief in a thinker, well, that thinker, it's another word for the ego, that separate self, right? The separate doer. But try and find it. Look closely when a decision's made. Right? Left or right? Thought pops up. Right. Turn the wheel. Right. There's no thinker there. The closer you look, again, then you go, thought appeared, action taken. Right? It's like, there's like three activities. Thought appears, action taken, next activity, thought, I took the right action. That ego is like, it's an afterthought. It's an afterthought. It happens, but it's so quick. That's why you gotta be laser focused. You get that awareness has to be super sharp, and it's super sharp when you're resting as that awareness, where you are still. Just like if you were a pond, you know, if someone even drops the speck of sand in you from over there, you know it because you're still. You sense every activity that's within you because you're so sensitive. You're so sensitive because you're so still, because you're remaining as that awareness. So that's the mind is so still. So any activity, someone just drops a rock, boom, creates ripples. You feel ripple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or you can feel it radiating away from where the rock was dropped in, because you're that sensitive, you're that still, that all that activity is happening within you. And this is really when you're turning awareness back onto itself, and you're really honing in on this I. It's like you got it trapped, you can say. Like, again, it's language sucks to explain this stuff because it's all like non-dual, but this I that you think is real, it's like you got it trapped in a corner, right? And as soon as you start questioning, oh yeah, because no one questions this. No one questions, is there a thinker? No one questions, who am I? No one questions, is there an actual separate entity that I refer to myself as? No one questions that. So now that you're questioning it, then it's kind of like you've got it pinned in a corner, right? And this is where you have to watch, because it's sneaky. The conditioned mind, it will say you got to go to the washroom. It'll say you're tired, you're hungry, as soon as you start getting close, right? As soon as you start coming closer to that mirage, right? Where it's like, there's the oasis in the desert. But as soon as you start getting closer, watch how quickly you start saying, oh, this is boring. I'm tired. I'm hungry. Maybe I should go do something else. These excuses just start coming because it knows that the closer you look at it, it knows that it's like, oh, I'm going to get found out that I'm a phony, that I'm a fraud, that I'm not real. So it throws everything at you when it's on its like way out, basically. It'll throw everything. It'll distract you. Oh, you're hungry. Go get a snack. It's trying to distract you. It's trying to get you to turn around and distract your attention. Because if you just keep your attention on it and you watch it, you know, okay, where are you? Come out wherever you are. Make a move so I can see it. Right? And then a movement's made. Now look at the source of the movement. Where did that come from? Where is that I arising out of? The fact that it's arising out of, it doesn't have its own, it doesn't have its own reality to itself. It doesn't exist as anything separate. It's arising out of something. Focus the attention on what it's arising out of. And you'll see it's arising out of you. Pure awareness, pure consciousness. That activity is arising. The I is an activity. And that activity is arising out of you. The stillness. When you remain still, you see the activity arising out of you. Sorry that this video is getting into this stuff. I know we're going beyond the ego here, but or just what the ego is, but hopefully you like it. If you look at these visualizers, you know, people play music and there's the visualizers, a bunch of just digital like waves and bars that are coming up and down, right? Then what is that made out of? Like, that's the activity. That's the activity that's moving with the movement. But you can see it's all arising out of just this stillness. Right? It's like, it's there, it's not there, it's there. It's just like the music, right? The sound is arising out of the silence. The sound is an activity arising out of the non-activity, the being, the silence. And that is what you are, pure being, pure silence, pure stillness. So the ego is arising out of you. And when that's seen very clearly, how can you be the separate entity that's coming and going when you're seeing it come and go from something that's not coming and going? You're seeing something that's impermanent. It's there, it disappears. It's there again, it disappears. It's there for a while and it wants to have a conversation and chat, and then it disappears. But there's a knowingness that it's appearing and disappearing. And that knowingness is what you are. That consciousness is what you are. And that knowingness, that consciousness, that awareness, all different words for the same thing that I'm using, that does not come and go. That is permanent. This separate entity, this bundle of thoughts, this activity it's like arising and falling, just like the visualizer, right? Just like the notes of music. But what's always there is the silence. What's always there is the stillness. That's what's aware of the activity. So that's when you're awareness is turning awareness back onto itself. And you're going to the source of this I, where it's like, all right, well, where is it? Where is it? Oh, it's not there. Now just watch the source of it. Because you'll see how it just, hopefully you can see here with the thing, there's nothing. You're watching nothing, which is you. This is the flat line, the stillness, right? The desk is still. And then you're watching, you're like, I think that ego just popped out of the hole and I think it's there. So just like a bunny, it's like, watch the hole, watch the source, right? Where the bunny's coming out of the hole. And you go, oh, here's the ego. Here it is. And it wants to have a conversation. And it goes back into its hole, right? Right? It comes up from the stillness and it goes back into the stillness. Comes the noisy separate self, comes out of the silence, and it goes back into the silence. But that's where you have to just be aware and watch it. Watch it like a hawk. And then you're not confused. There's no more doubt. You're seeing clearly. You're seeing clearly. You are the source. Not just that separate self is arising out of you. Everything is arising out of you. That you are the source of everything. Everything is arising out of you. That no thing, everything arises out of you. Right? So it's just seeing those. It's just seeing that. It's hard to see it when the mind is so active. But the more the mind stills, there's the less activity, less distractions, and you can really, because that's the other thing I'll point out. When I'm saying, look at the source of the I, that it's like the conditioned self, that I will throw every distraction at you, which you could say are thoughts. And that's what kind of pulls your attention. It's like it knows that you're getting close and you can't keep your attention on yourself, pure awareness. You can't continuously be aware of being aware, right? I mean, you can, but at this point, you can't. So, because your attention, you're then becoming aware of a thought and another thought and another thought. It's only when awareness becomes so laser focused that it can just like deeply penetrate and everything else just vanishes. And then it just basically, it's like it laser beams. Where's this I? All right, I got you in my crosshairs. I got you. Right? Just almost like you're like a hunter, just waiting for the rabbit to pop up. Right? And you go, I'm waiting for you. And you're just locked. You're just still and silent, waiting for the rabbit to come out of the hole. You go, if you come out, I got you. Right? That's basically honing in on that I. That's basically, I mean, hopefully you get the analogy, right? You're not hunting the ego, but you're honing in on it, and you're looking at the source of where it's coming from. And you go, okay, I'll find you. I see you're coming out of that hole. That hole, it's called nothingness. When you come out of that nothingness, I'm going to shoot you. But as you're waiting for it to come out of that nothingness, because you're so focused on the nothingness, there's a realization that you are that nothingness. That you are that nothingness. That nothingness is the source of the somethingness. And that somethingness is what you're calling the ego, the separate self. Right? That's why if you can just simply be aware of being aware and just remain aware. I mean, you close your eyes or not. It's better that you close your eyes until you can just remain aware of being aware. Until awareness turns onto itself and locks onto itself, you can say that's 24/7, effortless. That's really enlightenment. Until that's actually a thing, until that happens, can you just remain aware of being aware? And it helps if you just close your eyes, because then you're not distracted by anything. Aware of being aware. And notice that there's no separate self to be found when you're aware of being aware. It's not there. It's not there. It's like it's the whole that's the nothingness. The whole is aware of the whole. And so long as the whole is aware of the whole, no rabbit comes out of the hole. So you go right to the source of that I. At first, the practice is Well, now add this in. What is the ego? Okay, and then it's just a bundle of thoughts and feelings and a bunch of activity. Okay, so now you start watching the mind. You start watching the mind. You're watching the mind. Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. I'm spotting it. I see the ego. I see the movement. I see how it's moving and changing. It's very active. It's over there. It's there. It's jumping around. It's noisy. It's resting. It's noisy. It's resting. Right? You start seeing how it's coming and going. Then there's now become aware of what's aware of that activity of the mind. So then the attention goes from instead of attending to the mind, you start attending to yourself as pure awareness. So you direct this attention from being on the mind to then what's aware of the mind. Right? I'm looking for the ego. I see the I. Now, where is this I coming from? And you turn it back onto itself. Because that's what really like self-inquiry is. With finding that I, the famous who am I? Without that who am I, without awareness turning back onto itself, how can truth realize truth? How can the real self realize the real self? It can only realize it when it becomes aware of itself, when reality becomes aware of itself. Because you can almost say like reality is just aware of what's unreal. And it's unreal because it's always changing. It's impermanent. It's coming and going. It's appearing and disappearing. But that which knows everything coming and going, appearing and disappearing, changing, is the only thing that's real. And by only thing, I mean no thing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing. So it's really about watching it first, watching the activity. And you'll find the more you watch the activity, this is the thing, when you're not caught up in the activity and you're watching the activity, there's less activity. When you're caught up in the mind, it's going like a million miles a second. But as soon as you start watching the mind, witnessing it, this activity goes from this to then. And then it's a lot easier to see things when they're slow. You'll start noticing that everything becomes in slow motion. Your thoughts start becoming in slow motion. Another good example is in the movie The Matrix. It's like when I haven't watched it in a long time, like 10 years or something like that. But there's a point where he starts really discovering his power, I guess you can say, and just was able to like stop bullets and then like fight people and see them like in slow motion kind of thing and always be like a move ahead of them. And they're just appearing so slow compared to him. And he's like moving his arm like this, stopping the bullets, and just picking them out. And everything is in that kind of slow motion. Once you start watching your mind, everything that happens in the mind is basically slow motion. Because awareness is instantaneous. It's the fastest. And there's nothing that you actually have to do to be aware. Are you aware right now? Yeah, but how much did you have to try to be aware? How about right now? You're already aware. You're already aware. Everything is seen. Everything is seen by awareness. Whatever you think, you're saying, I'm thinking of a purple monkey. Well, awareness already saw that. It already saw that thinking, that purple monkey, the feeling towards the purple monkey, that your attention is on the purple monkey. It's seeing it all, instantaneous, before it even happens. It's there before, during, and after, because it's permanent. It's instantaneous. It's the default is instantaneous. You don't have to do anything. It's your true nature. It's what you are. This instantaneous, pure awareness. omnipresent intelligence. You go on. You're trying to describe and give words to infinity. It's pointless. But you'll notice that when you watch the activity of the mind, when you watch this so-called ego, that it becomes, it's like it appears in slow motion. Before, it's like you couldn't catch this thing. You actually think that you are it. Then after you go, okay, well, let me watch it. You go, okay, well, then it's almost like the story's not adding up. Okay, if you are the thinker, then show me exactly where you thought that one thought. And you're seeing it in slow motion, like thought appears, action. And you go, okay, Mr. Ego, where exactly did you go and decide that thought? Where did you choose that thought? I didn't see you leave and go to like the store and you had options in front of you. It's not like you picked this thought off the shelf of many different thoughts. That's what it makes you believe. That's the illusion. That you're like going and, okay, you got all these options, and you're looking at all the options simultaneously. I'm thinking this thought. Thank you very much. I'm thinking I'm just going to pick this thought out of the 5 other thoughts. It's never like that. What you're seeing, when are you ever seeing 5 instantaneous thoughts at a time? You're not. It's always one thought at a time. Right? And the more you become aware of that, then you see it's just a thought that's appearing and there's no thinker of that thought. Right? Even when you're talking to someone, when you're very present in conversation, are you really thinking the words that are coming out of your mouth? I'm not thinking any words that are coming out of my mouth. It's just happening. There's an awareness that there's a body speaking here. There's an awareness that words are coming out of the mouth. There's an awareness that there's no thinker with the words coming out of the mouth. Right? And for most people, that they're not able to pinpoint it. And it's very, again, that ego always wants to claim things. I thought of that, right? Thought appears, action, someone else then says, wow, that was a brilliant idea, right? Someone else congratulates that. Brilliant idea. Thanks. I thought of that all by myself. No, you didn't. It just happens. It just happens, right? So the more you watch the mind, then you start seeing things in slow motion. And you're seeing things in slow motion, and anything that's moving slower is a lot easier to see. It's hard to see stuff it's so blurry, right? You're watching a bunch of fast cars and someone says, did you see the red one? You go, I don't know. They were so fast that I couldn't really, was it red or was it purple? Like I couldn't even see. Right? It's even harder when someone says, did you see the number? Did you see the license plate number on that car? And you go, no, it was moving so fast. But if it slows down, right, then, oh yeah, you can see it. So the same is true. When you watch the mind, it just becomes slower. It becomes slower. And when things are becoming slower, then it's a lot easier to see things clearer, especially when you're watching it. If you're not watching it, there's no way you can see it, right? For the obvious reason, right? You can't see when you're not watching, right? People can't see where they're going if they're walking with their eyes closed. Right? The same thing. You can say like to understand the ego, to have this level of in-depth sight into the mind, you have to watch the mind. You can't just read books about analyzing it. Right? The best way to become more conscious is by simply just watching, by being conscious. Right? How do you be more, everyone's like, how do I be more conscious? Well, by being conscious. By being conscious every moment. And being conscious of everything. Right? So being conscious of the mind. You're then going to become more conscious of these subtle activities, you could say, of the mind that you're unconscious of. Another way to say it is you become aware of the subtle activities that you are unaware of. But it's not that hard. It is hard, but it's also not that hard. It just requires watching it. It just requires watching it. I've mentioned a couple of videos to make it kind of fun, but you treat your ego like a little kid. It is a little kid, right? It's a little kid. So just watch it. Watch it, right? Because you can see everything that it does. And when you're watching it, it tends to, you could say, be on its best behavior. And when you're not watching it, it will mess things up in the house. It's a disaster, right? And that's kind of it. You watch it, you start understanding it. Just like if you're watching an animal, right? It's like you're watching something on the Discovery Channel. The people that are watching those animals, they're watching from a distance. That's how they're able to see the patterns of the animal. Oh, it goes to the watering hole. Oh, this type of animal eats that type of animal. Oh, this animal has this type of predator. Oh, this animal does this sort of. It's only because you're watching it, right? They're not going and interviewing the animal. They're simply watching it. That's how they learn so much about it. So if you want to learn about the nature of your mind, if you want to learn about how your mind works and how this ego works and it's coming and going and popping out of different places and controlling, the life based off of the programs and the conditionings and the patterns, then you need to watch it by just witnessing it. And everything is a non-doing. Always when you're trying to identify, then you stop identifying. Always when you're holding on to a position, then you let go of it, right? It's always it's a non-doing. Like I said, it's an undoing and a shift from doing to being. That's what really is happening. And you'll feel it. You're still watching these videos, you'll feel it, that you're shifting from this doer, right? You're shifting from doing, always doing, to then being. That's why you feel more relaxed watching these videos. So you feel relaxed even after the video, right? Because your true nature is just super chill, super relaxed. There's no stress at all. Stress is only created when there's a separate self going in the opposite direction of life. And then there's resistance. And when there's resistance, there's stress. But when there's no separate self, there's no stress. There's just life. Life doesn't come with stress. We create our own stress through the sense of separation, through the belief in being a separate somebody. So you'll see that the shift is already happening within you if you're watching these videos, that there's a shift from person to presence, that there's this awareness that you're becoming more and more aware, and that you're able to just rest in yourself more and more. And you're noticing, I'm more peaceful. I'm more content for no reason. Before, there's always this doing to be content. Now it's like, funny how that works. When I'm not doing so much, I'm content for no reason. There's no reason why I'm content. I always thought there needs to be a reason, right? It's making it conditional. I can only be happy if, I can only be happy when. These are conditions. So that shift is already happening. And like I said, is when you're more and more aware, well, then you just watch the mind more, watch it more, watch it. When it becomes more and more still, now become interested. Oh, nothing's going on here. It's very still. Become aware, become interested in what's watching. You're turning awareness back onto itself. It's the only way for self-realization. You can't become self-realized. There's no one to become self-realized, but there's no self-realization unless awareness becomes aware of itself. So it's guiding the awareness, guiding the attention away from all this activity to then, okay, all this activity is coming and going and it's impermanent, but what is it that is permanent? And then you start valuing that. Then you start falling in love with that. Then you're devoted to that. And then something happens, right? It's better experience than explained. But anyways, let's leave it at that. I'll see you in the next one.